to our Accudemia monthly session for June. We are so excited to see so many of you in here today. We're going to be talking today about session assessments and the latest update in Accudemia. So we're going to jump right into it after some quick housekeeping. So we're going to start today with the best practices presentation. So I'll be covering best practices for session assessments, and we'll also have some Accudemia users coming in to talk about how they use session assessments. We'll then move into our tech demo, which is going to be our team talking about some new features in Accudemia, such as enhancements to the daily viewer, the student staff badges, notifications, and more. And we're also going to be talking about we're also going to be moving on from there to our Q&A. So we'll take any questions related to Accudemia, whether it's related to the presentations today, or if you just have a question for our team, we can take that as well. All right, so our first announcement, of course, is all about our Academic Center Summit. That is going to be February 7th through 9th next year in Orlando. We have held this conference 2 times in the past. It's always been really, really lovely. It's a combination of both professional development for learning center managers and comprehensive academia training. So you get kind of the best of both worlds there. Nick has just pasted the link into the chat to learn more about it. But it's going to be near the University of Central Florida. Our speaker is going to be Jenny Haley. She's from Ball State University and the chairperson of Claudia. We'll have some really great excursion opportunities. It's always really nice for people to come together and learn from each other. We are currently accepting proposals for breakout sessions, so if that's something you're interested in, we encourage you to take a look at that link that we just pasted into the chat. And speaking of Jenny Haley, she is actually also going to be our next keynote webinar speaker. Her topic for this webinar is going to be embedded tutoring across disciplines. As always, these webinars are free for anybody who would like to attend. That is going to be held on Wednesday, July 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern. And so she'll be presenting on embedded tutoring. You can sign up right now using that link. Nick, if you could get that, I see him moving. I think he's pasting that into the chat right now as well. If you want to sign up for that, we would love to see you there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about best practices for session assessments. And this is a feature that I don't think is used as much as it could be. And when I do see it utilized, I see it utilized in ways that I think could be improved upon. So this was why I chose this topic for our monthly Accudemia session this month. And I have some ideas that maybe could help convince you to use it, or maybe could help you use it a little more thoroughly and effectively. So just kind of a quick breakdown. We're not going to go into a demo of the feature because we have those on our website already, but just a quick breakdown if you're not sure what session assessments are. They are a customizable questionnaire in Accudemia. Customizable as in you completely decide what questions are asked and what the potential responses to those questions are. This is completed usually by tutors or any other support staff that's working with student. Obviously, most folks working with Accudemia are tutors, so that's usually who fills it out, but there might be other folks filling it out as well. And these are tied to the session log. So if a session assessment has been created for your center, then there is a session assessment tied to every session log, whether or not it has been filled out. This really helps to capture information that may not be reflected in attendance data alone. And I really want to emphasize that because I've seen a lot of session assessments that ask for data that really has already been captured by other means. And I'll talk a little bit about what the potential issues with that are. But some information you might want to actually capture in a session assessment include things like academic progress, session outcomes, student engagement, topics covered, referrals made, risk indicators, success milestones. A lot of these things are more qualitative information than quantitative, you'll notice. So they might be a little bit subjective, but there are still ways that you can try to kind of measure them in a more universal way. But the big thing that I like to keep in mind when pitching session assessments is that we have those great session logs that tell you that the meeting occurred, but the assessments are going to tell you what happened and whether it mattered. So getting beyond what are they is why should I use session assessments? So some reasons are it helps answer questions like, are the sessions helping students improve? What outcomes are the staff producing? What interventions are most effective? It creates data that can be reported to campus leadership, grant funders, accreditation bodies, program directors. A lot of times, like, we're using data that is just showing us raw numbers. Data from assessments can really help that data tell a story. So some example metrics that you could use in these reports: the percentage of students that demonstrate improved confidence, their most common academic challenges, the rate at which their goals are being completed, really helping to convey the success of a breadth of student types. Another reason to use session assessments: identifying trends before they become problems, being more proactive with realizing, like, hey, these students might need more support, or this initiative that we're trying isn't working. So if a student, for example, repeatedly reports low confidence, and then if an advisor is identifying time management struggles in their session assessments, if a student is showing signs of disengagement. This is also going to help with things like standardizing staff documentation. So most of you probably already know session logs have a notes field already. And this is just an open field. It doesn't ask anything specific. It just says notes. And that can be good if you just need to do like a quick note about something unusual that happened in a session. But if you're looking to standardize it, if you are requiring your staff to produce notes after every session, I really encourage people to use those session assessments, because it really helps standardize that. So without these assessments, the notes are going to vary by staff member. That's just a way that it works with an open text field. I was talking to a client today who is having folks fill out a form after meeting with a student, and it's, the quality of information she's getting back is going to vary widely. Information tends to get lost if there's not a standardized form that they're asked to fill out. You as the supervisor are going to struggle to compare those sessions. You're going to have a hard time figuring out, like, well, what exactly happened from session to session? If the student saw multiple tutors, how do I know if, like, a lack of progress, like, what to attribute it to, or if there was even a lack of progress? With assessments, so we have a consistency of information recording. Data becomes searchable and reportable. That's really important. In academia, you can export reports that include the session notes on a session log, but it's not a questionnaire. It's again, it's just that open text field. So there are reports in academia that make it a lot easier to really see what's going on in these sessions. And then new staff, I think, are more likely to adopt these workflows if they understand exactly what is being asked of them and they see very clear-cut responses with hopefully limited answers. So talking about typical uses, the majority of the time when I see session assessments being used, it's being used for tutoring session summaries. I see a lot of questions that I see that I like seeing, that I thought were really great. What topics were covered? What assignments were reviewed? Was the student prepared? This is a big one that it seems like a lot of folks want to know. Monitoring progress of students, both in tutoring centers and in other types of areas. Did the student demonstrate understanding? What was their confidence level before and after the session? So these are questions that in my research I thought I saw coming up over and over again. And so let's get into also some out of the box strategies. If you're thinking we're not a typical center for one reason or another, or we use it that way, but how can we expand our usage? what else could we do with it? Tutor reflection and professional development is a big one. This can be really, really helpful when thinking about your training and coaching programs, helping you really pinpoint what like overall tutors need to work on a overall level rather, or on an individual level for private coaching. So some sample questions that really get tutors to reflect not on how the student did, but on how they did. What went well, what was challenging, what instructional strategy was used. Another kind of out of the box idea is to look at it not as a way of measuring the student academically, but looking at their indicators of engagement and belonging. We know that engaged students, students who feel like they're a part of a community, are more likely to stay in the school, even if they are struggling academically. So this can really help you, especially I hear from tutoring centers all the time. We need to be able to show that what we're doing is helping students stay in school. And so this is one way to do that, helping you to connect your tutoring data to the school's overall retention and student success initiatives and saying, hey, we are a part of this. We are a part of that integral student experience. So some sample questions for a questionnaire that's focused on this. Did the student appear engaged? Did the student express confidence? Did the student discuss campus involvement? Again, the appropriateness of these questions is going to depend on the nature of the services that your area provides, but focusing on this can be a way to kind of help expand the possibilities of what your what your center's role is at the college level, at the institutional level. So some ideas, some thoughts for design best practices, and these are generally best practices for any type of questionnaire, but keeping it short. And I know your tutors probably don't have a lot of time in between sessions with students. So ideally, they should take about 30 to 90 seconds to complete. I've seen some that were looked like they were so short that they wouldn't really give anything useful, or so long that the tutor might feel a little overwhelmed or might skip it altogether. Focusing on actionable data, avoiding questions that no one reports on or which can be gathered by other means. So I mentioned that a little bit at the beginning, but this is something that I am really passionate about, is not asking questions that the session log already gathers. I have seen session assessments that ask questions like, what class did the student come in for? Was the student late for their appointment? And I think that in a lot of cases, it's just not clear that these are things that you can already know, and you don't need the student or the tutor to self-report on that. Um, Whenever you're thinking about a question to ask, and whether it's a meaningful question to ask in that 90-ish seconds you want to capture that tutor's attention, ask yourself, what would we do differently if we knew the answer to this question? And if the answer is, well, nothing, probably, then it might not be as valuable a question to ask, even if the results would be very interesting. Again, another thing I am a proponent of is using mostly structured responses, avoiding open text questions. This might require a little bit more work on your part to think of like, what are the common responses to a question like this, even one that seems a little more esoteric, but it's well worth it because you're actually going to get data that you can sort through rather than kind of just a varied quality of information that you really have to sit there and sift through, follow up on, and really try to figure out what's going on with that. Of course, that doesn't mean you can't have any open text questions. The open text field is there in the questionnaire builder, but I would try to limit yourself to one or two of these per assessment, and be specific about what you're asking people to put in there. Like, is it just an overall comments field, or is it asking them to elaborate on another question? And review annually. There's nothing wrong with saying like, hey, we want to really dig into if this is working, if we need to refocus our questions, if we need to be asking different questions altogether. This is a natural part of the process, just removing any unused questions and considering what the new priorities are, because I know as higher education employees, we know that new priorities are coming in all the time, and we want to try to be aligned with that on an institutional level. All right, so I have talked long enough. I want to hand things over to some of our users. I'm gonna first show a video of Linda from Monterey Peninsula College. So just give me 1 second to pull that up. Well, Linda, thank you so much for joining me. And we're really excited to hear how you all use session assessments in Accudemia. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience and your center's experience at Monterey Peninsula College using this feature?
Yes, so we use it primarily in our reading and writing center, and we were tracking positive attendance for apportionment, and we needed to track the kind of work students were doing. So was it literacy work? Was it related to critical thinking or communication? And so we tracked that so we could use that in our reporting to the state.
And how have the results of those reports, those session assessments, shown anything interesting to you all? Or was it just kind of to get that data that you needed to report? But I'm curious if there were any interesting surprises there.
Great question. We didn't have any great surprises there. What it did for us was really um, help us to know that we were doing the right thing, right? So keeping our integrity in our reporting and positive attendance. That said, we also used it for other data that I didn't mention just now, which is other reporting data to the state. So we are reporting when we give referrals to other centers, such as basic needs, referrals to other resources on campus, and that we do track, and that we also report. We didn't find any unusual data, but it did help us to participate in the bigger picture of the school's reporting to the state.
Oh, that's always really great when you can have a seat at that table, and then the data that can help you get to that point. How has buy-in been for your staff that have to remember to make these reports? Are they required to do it after every session, and how has that adoption rate been for you all?
That's a great question. They at the one center, the Reading and Writing Center, they are required to do that, and we've had kind of a mixed level of adoption, right? So it's kind of somewhat typical for putting a policy or procedure in, whereas the majority of people are using it consistently, and there's a couple of people who just had to to buy into it and be reminded to please complete those reports. But overall, it's been pretty good. It was part of our training. We trained people on our expectations and what we
Hmm.
needed, and they were able to adopt it pretty easily. It's an easy function to use, right? Once the staff knows where to look, they click on it and complete it, and we try to build it as intuitively and easy for them to fill out as possible.
Yeah. Are there any plans to expand its usage, to revisit the questions or anything like that? Or are you all happy with how it's written out now?
That's a great question. At this time, we're happy with it. We had, when we originally set it up, also set it up so that tutors could write down what they worked on with the student so that the next tutor working with them could follow up and know where the session was at. But we found that wasn't being used or as useful
Hmm.
as the other data. So we eventually took that out. But there might be a time in the
Yeah,
future we could put that back in if it becomes more valuable. For
sure.
example, when there's a lot of heavy online work,
Mm.
and the staff isn't in contact with one another as much, then that might be more useful again.
Great. Well, I think that's all my questions. Did you have anything else you wanted to add about this?
I think it's a great tool because the tools that we currently have set up, right, apart from it, we just might need that extra layer, right, of
Hmm.
data collection, and that provides that opportunity for that. So I really like that. And it could be
Good.
used for other multiple things as well, right? I could potentially use it to check in on the tutors themselves, right, to see how they're feeling about a session, which is a nice option to consider.
Good. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Linda. I really appreciate it. And um, thank you for sharing how your center uses session assessments.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks to Linda for providing that. That was really helpful. I love the ideas for using it in the future, especially they sound really cool. Becca, are you with us?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Perfect.
Are you going to be sharing anything?
Oh, not my screen or
Oh,
anything.
that's fine. That's fine. Let me go back to the PowerPoint here. So, Okay, and it looks like the College of San Mateo folks are not able to join us today, but I will just hand things over to you, Becca.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so kind of just piggybacking off of everything that was shared about session assessments, I think it's been really useful for our office to kind of keep tabs on how students engage with our one-on-one tutoring specifically. So one-on-one tutoring is our appointment based where those students work with a tutor one-on-one, and that's separate from our drop-in tutoring services and supplemental instruction. And the main purpose of this is since tutors are working with students on that more interpersonal and usually more consistent basis, we do want to track how often they're using it, but then also the quality of those tutoring sessions. So we do have the survey aspect where students will rate their session, give feedback about their work with the tutor. So we see that perspective, but we also want to see the tutor's perspective of how engaged the student was, what they discussed, and just make sure that those two kind of align, especially if it's a rare situation where a student gives any kind of criticism or negative feedback about a tutoring session. It's important that our tutors also advocate for themselves. So that session assessment gives them the opportunity to describe the session. If the student was not engaged, but the student provided a survey saying that the tutoring session did not go well, we can kind of see what went wrong there, and then also how they may have or may not have improved by the end of that session. And then one of the open-ended questions that we ask is what strategies, resources, tips, or tools did the tutor use during that session to also see what works well for students. So we do get a lot of questions from tutors who are maybe just starting in the role of what's been the most useful thing that tutors do when working with students. And by having this data, we can use that for continued professional development. Well, in the past, for this specific subject, this worked or that worked, something like that. And then we also have an option selection at the end of did you make any referrals? That way we can run a report to see what referrals were most made by our tutors to see what we could integrate more education about in professional development, make sure that tutors know more of from day one versus they have to find it more mid-semester. And my favorite part about the session assessments is the reporting feature that Rachel mentioned, because I don't check the sessions, my lead tutors do. Just last fall, our center had over 7,000 tutoring sessions. So I want to make sure that we are keeping good quality, but I don't have the bandwidth for that. So what I've set up is that our session assessments do a daily report to the lead, and whoever is on duty prints out that report, looks over all the feedback, and looks for any red flags from a tutor in their session with a student, and then also just keeping track of those patterns that they're seeing if students are struggling in a particular class or with a specific professor based on the information from the appointment. And then if any of those are a red flag or consistent concern, then they report up to me. So that's a good way to use the session assessment for anybody in any of your peer student supports that are in a leadership role. And I
Yeah.
think that's all my spiel about it.
No, I like that. Because the point you make about red flags is so important because I think like individual tutors, especially peer tutors, might just not be able to spot those patterns either because of a lack of experience or just because they only work with a student once and then someone else works with them the rest of the time. And I think that that is really great that you're using that to kind of look for those patterns and raise those red flags, which you can't do as easily if you're not collecting that data.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Becca. Becca is from Creighton University, by the way, and thank you for talking to us about session assessments.
no
Um,
problem.
yeah. So the last one I have is Lysandra from the University of West Alabama. So I'm gonna Let's see. I am going to bring up her video next. Well, thank you, Lysandra, for meeting with me. Lysandra is from the University of West Alabama, and thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell me a little bit about how you use session assessments in Accudemia?
Thank you once again for reaching out to me. I use session assessments after every tutoring sessions. Once the student have the tutees have to sign in order for the tutors to access this. But after every session, the tutors go in and they fill out complete quick evaluation. And it's pretty much just a few questions. It asks if the students arrived on time, if the students were prepared for the session, and was the student motivated to learn. And I also asked the tutors to briefly discuss the session. And my last question is I asked is if the tutors have any concerns for the students. And this helps a lot when alerts come in for students. It helps with keeping track if the students aren't doing so well in the class, because I work closely with the advisors. If I get a session assessment and the tutor has concern regarding the student, if they're not showing up or if they're not understanding the course material, I reach out to their advisor. And so that's mostly what I use it for.
And has the information helped you, like overall? I know you said you use it to reach out to advisors. Has the information gathered from the session assessments? Do you find that it plays an instrumental role in that? Like, are the reach outs more effective now that you're using that feature?
Yes, they are. But it gives me just for example, if we encounter a student who isn't doing so well in a particular class, I follow up. Once I read the evaluation, I follow up with the tutor. I call them in. We go over their concerns for the student. And then I also, after I meet with the tutor, I follow up with the tutee. I bring them in, ask them, how the tutor is helping them effective. So, because sometimes we have to find a different approach. Some students are visual learners. Some learn by highlighting, and some learn by audio. And so that helps me kind of pinpoint if the tutor needs to go into a different direction as well. Like I said, I work closely with the advisors, so I can just walk down the hall, let them know, hey, this student is having trouble in this class. And a lot of times the student has already reached out to their advisor about dropping the class. So if we find a different approach to help the student, the tutor finds a different approach to help the student, a lot of times that the student does a lot better.
Yeah, and that's really cool that you can kind of divert that path. Have you been able to gather any statistics on how much you've been able to affect students from dropping a class?
No, we haven't done that yet.
Oh, okay. That would be really interesting to do. How has adoption been with your tutors in terms of like buy-in and the thoroughness of their replies in the session assessments?
The tutors, they have gravitated towards it well because it gives them a lot of times the sessions are after hours because I schedule sessions up until 8 p.m. And a lot of times they don't have time to drop in because I'm, out of the office. So this gives them a chance to just highlight their concerns for the students without having to come by my office a lot of times.
Yeah.
So they've enjoyed this feature.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for all that information. Was there anything else that you wanted to add or make sure folks were aware of? It sounds like those assessments are really helping your students.
Yes, they are. One of the things I do is it has helped a lot when it comes to following up with the students. Because a lot of times the students, it's hard to reach them if they're having trouble with anything. Instead of me waiting for them to come to me, I reach out to them. So it helps a lot with that because a lot of students shy away from asking for help or if they have any concerns. So that helps me a lot. And that way I reach out to the student and bring them in to me. Or sometimes I go to them. But
Yeah.
by me knowing this on the assessments help with that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I can see how it helps you all be more proactive, and I think that's really wonderful. Well, thank you, Lysandra. Thank you so much for your time today and for speaking with me, and I hope you have a wonderful summer.
Thank you. You as well.
All right, I am going to go ahead and stop sharing. Thanks, everybody, for your time today.